I think I'll just start with a couple of updates that happened over the last 2 weeks. Because feels like, T is kind of like going at the speed of AI right now. Um, yeah, we're still developing really quickly. Packaging was insane last week. Right now we're up to like version 0.25.3. With 25, or I think 25.1, we merged our two pantries. If you remember, we had Pantry Core and Pantry Extra. Basically, with the whole idea that we can decentralize the pantry system. However, most of the contributors and contributions flowed into Pantry Extra, especially around the top 300 challenge. So we wanted to make it really easy for everyone and have a single directory for the pantry. So last week, Max merged Pantry Core over, like basically all the packages over to Pantry Extra and renamed it to Pantry. So while the basically GitHub will redirect any request to Pantry Extra to Pantry. So, all the Git remotes and everything from your forks will still work, but you could like update those if you want to. So I just updated mine, for example. But everything worked fine with the Pantry Extra URL.
I can talk about that if you want.
Say it again?
I could talk about that if you want.
Yes, please. Go ahead, Max.
Always feel free to invite me to speak. Initially, before we launched back in November, I was cognizant of how Homebrew had behaved in the first year, and the fact that the amount of contributions we got was very large and pace that we couldn't really keep up with. Well, I say we, it was basically me at that point. So I wanted to have a separate pantry for important things this time round, as well as the fact that I wanted multi-pantry to be a feature that was developed quickly, and well, we haven't, but will. So it seemed like it made sense to have two pantries to start with, but with hindsight, that was stupid cool. That's the truth of it. I was thinking about what it was like to be maintaining Brew in like year 2, and we're not year 2 yet. So it just made everything more complicated for everyone, including us. We had loads of code that was dedicated to knowing the fact that there was multiple pantries. Meant that like people who are trying to contribute packages don't know where to go. There was 3 pantries because like there was 0 as well, which was meant to be the one you forked to create your own pantries. And like that will probably come back in some capacity, although I'm reconsidering the design for that now. So I'm not one to stubbornly continue with how things work just because. I've never been like that. If it's not working, I throw it away, even if it's been a lot of work. This wasn't a lot of work, but it created more work than was necessary, so it's a shame. But this is better to have one. Now everyone knows where to go. We've got one place for docs. We've got one place for packages. Tooling just works much more seamlessly for users and for us. It was a good call all around, I believe.
Yeah, 100%. I think it makes everything much clearer. Yeah, in addition to kind of like the single pantry, we got still our top 300 challenge. Although it quickly evolved to becoming, as you can see, kind of like 540 tasks or packages. And what we've done here is we basically, so we scrolled and looked for the top 300 packages that were requested. And then, of course, each of these have also their own dependencies. So that's why we ended up at kind of like roughly 545. Although there's much more packages, and only the packages that we have kind of like not built yet have been listed here, or have built recently, then we listed these here as well. So that's why the list is so long. And you can see some of them have a link associated to it, and that's basically because we created for each of these packages, we created its own issue. And if there is this checkbox for like these two checkboxes here, that basically means that this package has already been completed, closed, so the issue is closed. And what that means is someone has committed this particular package already. And so if you scroll down like the top 100, right, like here you see the rank. If it's a bit too small, let me know. I can like increase the font size. The top 100 are pretty much like, there's a couple more packages that are missing, like in the 70 plus region, but everything like below that has been covered. So that means all of these earlier packages, right, they're kind of like super core packages, and everything that comes later is kind of builds on top of these packages and uses them. Anything to add here, Max?
Yeah, well, almost certainly. Yeah, like some of the missing pieces nearer the top, like DocBook is up there, for example. We're not quite sure how to package that yet, and like Pi3 Cairo is a little higher.
Yep.
I'm not sure if we should even package that or not yet. So it's part of the reason some of these are not done. And so if you're going to tackle these, I'd certainly start lower than the big bump. Like JPEG XL should be easy. I'm not sure why we haven't done that yet. Some of these Python ones, though, I'm not sure if we should be packaging those. Like when I did run Brew with an iron fist, I refused to package such things. Mike McQuaid, in the end, who is still the lead maintainer, after I stopped being like an active participant, decided that these things needed to be in there. I certainly understand his justification for it. If you're going to be a package manager, then you should, in many ways, dictate what versions of things people are getting. So if you have some other package later in the graph that requires like GObject3, for example, should you get pip to get it, or should you package it yourself? And I was always of the perspective that pip should get it, because pip know how to maintain their own packages, right? We're the layer below pip. We install pip and then use pip. So I don't know, maybe we will, maybe we won't. Like, one good thing about the namespacing system that we have with T as opposed to Brew is the fact that it makes it much easier to just shove anything in there. With Brew, it's like one namespace, single namespace, and that's the case with almost all package managers. Like this time around, I figured that it would be cool to have multi-level, and it's proved like extremely useful in many ways. Like we have several packages that other packaging managers wouldn't bother to package, because figuring out the name for it is like a pain. And if you look at like Debian's package names, you can quite clearly see that they're struggling with a single namespace nowadays, because it's just like gobbledygook for a lot of these packages, how they're called. Just in order to like insert them into the graph. So yeah, I'd start lower, but like we really like having this ticket pinned. You can just go there and see what's important. The stuff at the top is the most important stuff in open source. Package config. Like it's such a bad tool, package config. It really is, but it's become indispensable for so much low-level tooling. Certainly, if you use NPM as that's all you use day to day, then you'll never probably have heard of package config. But everything under that, like the massive graph of open source that sits underneath everything, package config is the thing that everything needs. It shouldn't be as important as it is. I do wonder about how it's going to be remunerated after our protocol goes live. Almost certainly freedesktop.org. They're the people who maintain it. will choose not to take any token. I'm guessing because
That's
they're
very
quite an
interesting.
organization. Sorry,
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Why is that?
because they're quite an organization at this point. They have a company. They're a charitable status organization. Like quite a lot of the old open source has these organizations around them to try and support what they're doing. They're not getting enough support. Like, I think one of the only foundations that is like making enough money to survive is Mozilla. And I don't know how they're doing that anymore, because it used to be the case that Google sponsored Mozilla, right? Like a lot of money, because they wanted Mozilla, Firefox to be the better browser, the best browser in the world, the number one. And then Google decided to make their own, of course. Like that was quite a while ago now. How old is Chrome? More than 10 years.
Yep.
Yeah, like 13.
A lot
14
more
years.
than 10 years.
Yeah. I think it was like 2010, 2011 when Chrome came out. Anyway, like before that, Google wanted to use Firefox, but they decided that they could do a better job. And well, to be fair, I think they did. But still a pity. Like Chrome is open source, sure, sort of, mostly. So it's not easy to build. Like that's my definition of open source, that it can work, because Google are basically the only people who build it. Go and try and build Chrome. Like I dare you. It's impossible. It requires a huge amount of intrinsic knowledge about how its build system works. And that's all contained at Google. It's open source only in name, and well, technically it's open source. But would we bother packaging it? Like probably not. Like why bother? It would be a huge amount of effort. And they don't really care. They'll change how it works on their own whim, right? Because it is a Google project, like completely. Anyway, getting off topic. Back to you, Mark.
Just slightly. No, it's all good. That's a free conversation, so anyone can chime in. Yes, so basically this is going to be, so it sits what Max meant. It's pinned up top here on the issues. I can always find it. Obviously, you can also search it within the organization. But yeah, pick any of these packages that are not checked, basically that are not closed yet.
I wouldn't do DocBook though. Like I'd start at JPEG XL because DocBook we're not sure how to package. Like Magnus already tried recently and then sort of gave up, and I've tried twice. It's a weird one, but yeah.
Yeah. There's also a couple of packages further down that are still open. So yeah, I can just like pick a random one from here. Obviously look at, how I typically do it, or how we do it, is we paste it here, the formula for Homebrew, and here you can kind of like see the Ruby code for, or the package that Homebrew uses. And last week we did this. We can do this again today if you want. I can show you little things like that have changed in the packaging, how to package, and like where the build files go, where the test cases go, and where the actual build goes, because we've changed that from last time to not have a t.out folder anymore. Yeah, but this is basically, you want to kind of look at the Homebrew formula, but then also, of course, go to the actual URL, if this package exists, if this is all correct. There's documentation here online that you can find about, in this case, FreeXL. Yeah, and look at the source code, of course. And all the different versions of the source code. Yeah, not all of them have, they're not all hosted on GitHub, of course, especially the older ones, right? They're hosted on their own servers. So there's like slight issues with kind of like the versions, or at least getting the versions automatically. So yeah, that's just a workaround where we have to update the package YAML files if there is a new version basically coming out. But that's like only like some of the packages. Most of the open source software nowadays, the new ones at least, come out on GitHub. They have proper versions, most of them. So that makes everything easy because we have that auto versioning system in place. Maybe we can talk about the docs. Max, you set them up. You cleaned up a lot of the the README is much more concise now on the CLI project. Anything you want to add here?
Hey, sorry. Yeah, sure. So, well, having proper documentation was something we wanted to do a while ago, but we're a small team and it's just so much time. But once I transferred a bunch of it and then added more, because I'm a big believer that the README is the most important part of an open source project. Like, at least if you're a dev tool, a lot of devs go straight to the GitHub rather than read the website itself. And then they read the README, and if the README doesn't sell them, then they bugger off. They're not interested. So, we've gone through a few iterations of the README for T. I consider myself kind of an expert on READMEs at this point, honestly. I've done so many for so many different open source projects. And I put as much effort into that as many of the other pieces, which I think is rare in open source. But the open source that is most successful, that is one of the things that happens. But it was a bit much. It was a bit. It lacked concision in the right places, and it was too verbose in the wrong places. And so I knew I needed to try and split that out. And then when I put most of the docs here, plus some things onto this doc book here, Gitbook, I realized that the README could be made much more concise. Now I think it's a little too concise, but I prefer to cut it down, then build it back up. And I got a bunch of notes for a few things I'm probably going to add in there, but it does the main important parts, which is sells itself at the top, and that's the majority of it. So it gives like several like killer features that make you go, oh yeah, well I can see why I would want this, and then get straight to the getting started. Like, you wouldn't believe how many open source projects I put the getting started in the wrong place. It amazes me. And the getting started is as short as I could make it. So use the installer. If you don't like the installer, go to the docs, and we link to the docs for the second time. And then there's a whole section, documentation and manual, because the truth is, like, some people just are searching with Command F for the docs, and so if you don't have a big section documentation, they might miss it. And we want them to go there because there's a lot of information that we've taken out of here now, like how to use T, like what are the parts of T that you might be interested in once you've used it for a while, once you're looking for those features that aren't in the README. And here the using T section is still empty. I need to add some stuff there. I didn't want it to be exactly the same as the README, so that's why it's empty, which is awful, I know, but you get away with these things with open source projects. So people are like, oh, it's open source, it's okay. You don't expect it to be a Microsoft level of polish. Not that I consider their stuff polished. You certainly wouldn't have a blank page on documentation, usually. So yeah, we're quite pleased with it. I think it's a start. There's a lot more to add. I have a long list of notes of stuff to add in the README, but it doesn't have to just be me. I got loads of other things I'm working on, which is why I haven't finished the docs yet, but I'll get to it. But anyone can add, make a pull request. They should feel like they can. We'll discuss it, and if it's right, we'll merge it.
Yeah, the docs repo is just /docs on our GitHub. So that's pretty straightforward. I was thinking, I mean, first of all, I want to ask like if there's any questions from your end, or maybe just general discussion, what you've been working on. Have you tried packaging anything since last time? If so, what were you like? Did you struggle? Was it easy?
Testing.
Yes, it works. We hear you.
Sorry.
All good.
So I had one. I kind of just had a question as to why it's more difficult in general for Python packages. Like what? Why does it? I don't know. Why is Python a problematic language when it comes to packaging stuff? And where are some common places that we can try to figure out what's going on? I can like expand on this. I guess this came from like its tool itself, right? And then there was a couple of other. I can't remember what it was. So anyway, I just wanted to, I guess, for like the uninitiated in terms of packaging, why is Python problematic, and then like what are some debugging strategies that you guys use that would be helpful?
Yeah, like Python is one of the harder ones, and I think anyone who works with Python is fairly aware of that. Bad decisions long time ago. You know, like to be fair to them, like people didn't know how to package things. We didn't have the same level of expertise about how to package and how that impacts the system. When Python was originally created, which was 20 years ago at this point. I don't know how old it is. It's quite old. But like Python and pip, I believe Poetry. There's this new package manager for Python called Poetry, fixes some of these issues, or I don't know how. You can install you can install things and then it ends up destroying other things you've already installed, basically. So with T and Brew and everything else that packages Python up separately from the tools that come with the system, we create a virtual environment for the package and then install everything there. So, like package managers in a way were initially introduced because systems were a lot more constrained. So you wanted to make sure that you were installing as little as possible and certainly no duplication. Nowadays, people care a lot less about that, hence Rust and Go. Just create static binaries with all the packages compiled into it. So the binaries end up being much larger. We've got someone who needs to be muted. What was I saying? Yeah, so, that's not good. I think at some point people will start complaining. Like, if the entire system becomes Rust, which is what they're trying to do, right? Like, everyone's trying to replace all the POSIX tools and above with Rust equivalents that are better. But they're not better in terms of size, because they don't have dependencies that are dynamically linked. Anyway, getting off topic a bit. So, with Python, when you pip install stuff, it does install these things separately, but they can end up like overwriting each other in ways that cause things you've already installed to break. So we have to install everything in virtual environments, segmented with some stubs, little shell scripts to make sure it works properly without polluting the rest of your system. It works easy enough. It's fine. What I was talking about earlier with Python. Sorry,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
What I was talking about earlier with Python libraries, like PyCairo 3, for example, is I'm not sure we should be installing Python libraries for exactly what I was talking about, right? Like, I think pip should install those, but then if we install Python apps, programs, which we have like many severals already, then we should package them up in virtual environments. But, longer term, I want T to use pipx and gemx and npx and There isn't a Rust equivalent. Yeah, and Rust has to be compiled, so we'll never be able to do that for Rust. Because I don't really feel we should be packaging up all this stuff. Like, PipX does the job. Although it's slower, admittedly, because it has to compile things. So I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Okay. Yeah, a bit. But so the fact that Python deletes things and is like a little bit iffy about where it installs certain stuff, is that something then you have to like do within the script section of the YAML to say is like, hey, install this specific thing by creating a virtual environment, or does T just handle that when you tell it to itself? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, so we have maybe Mod can show. We have a Python VM script that we use. Just go to one of the. Well, no, I was going to say go to a YAML, package YAML. One like YouTube DL, for example. GitHub search is as bad as ever. Right. There we go. Yeah, so you can see how simple it can be to package up something Python. Most of this is just metadata. The actual build script is one line on line 16, Python VM.show. Then you pass it the executable, and BrewKit does all the work. So it can be really simple, but then like you got stuff like pipenv, which isn't simple, and pip, because you can't use pip to install itself. Probably fortunately, like we use T to install T, and it has actually caused problems. Well, to build T. Like the Python VM script's just a T script. We import Git at the top, which is what we need. Strictly, we also need Bash, but I think BrewKit itself imports that. And we just create a virtual environment, create a Git tag, because we over the last few months, we figured out all these little things that we have to do in order to make it work. Like we create a Git tag with the version, because a lot of pip packages expect to be in a Git checkout with the version in order to get their version information, surprisingly. Which is fine, because we can do that. Like one of the best things about being a package manager is it's super easy to get other packages that you need for whatever task you're doing. Then we get pip installed to install it. We create this stub here. There's a script that we create. So when you type YouTube DL, it runs this script instead, and basically that just sets up the environment for the virtual environment that Python needs, and then executes the tool. Yeah, it's fairly self-explanatory, really. I didn't know how to do this initially, and went to Brew to try and figure it out. God, Brew's code base it's not good nowadays. I'm sorry. Like when I wrote it, it was tidy. Nowadays, it's unbelievably huge, and finding this code was difficult. So I actually called on John Chang, who has worked on Homebrew a whole bunch with lots of Python, and he helps us out T here and there, and had him help me. But I figured out a lot of it myself. You just go to the docs. Truth of it, once you package enough stuff, you just know where to look, how to look, what to look for. ChatGPT has helped a bit for sure. Its knowledge certainly becomes a little more flaky around this kind of stuff for some reason, and it hallucinates a lot.
Are you using 3.5 or 4?
For this, it's 3.5.
Right.
I've used 4 too. I don't find it really significantly better, honestly. Like, I know a lot of people say it's significantly better. What I use it for, it seems about the same. Just slower and with rate restriction.
The great thing about ChatGPT for solving some of these tech problems is that even when it's wrong, it often points you in the right direction. So it's super useful in that regard.
Yeah, that's totally true. I've had it give me like a completely hallucinated answer, but it triggered like the right thinking so that I could Google for something. Yeah.
Yeah, another thing I wanted to share, because we pulled up YouTube DL, we have this in the pantry, we have this wiki entry called examples. Probably should move this over to the docs now that we have the docs there. but basically it's linking out to the package YAML files of some examples that could come in handy if you're packaging something, right? So if you're packaging something that requires CMake and the documentation on whatever package you're looking at to package is not clear, then you can it's always good to look at existing package YAML files. So one of the things, and I think we mentioned this already I think Sanchit had a case with CMake as well. We have this extra key here called working directory, which kind of make dir build out /out, and then CDs into it, and kind of that's what this working directory means. So you don't need to actually create this directory with make dir in the scripts, in the build scripts section, and it's small hacks that you can learn from existing packages. So how do you package Go with a mod file, without a mod file? So without a mod
Super
file,
helpful.
go
Super
if you
helpful.
go.
Thanks.
I didn't understand that.
I
Yeah,
just said
so-
it was super helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that part.
Oh yeah. Welcome. You're welcome. What else? Is there anything interesting? I mean, we mentioned this, right? Some packages don't have a version key in their GitHub, or they have not released a version. So actually it's a good opportunity to check if Keep has a version by now. No. So if you see releases like no releases published, and tags is 0, that just means that there's 0 versions for us to work with. So what we do instead is we kind of tag them with version 0.00, which is not ideal. But right now, I don't know, Max, you probably also haven't given this much thought yet, but yeah, this is something we talked about that we don't really have a good way yet.
Just today, because I've been packaging up llama.cpp, and honestly, I'm quite excited about it because I think we might be the best way to use llama.cpp once I've finished. Because you can use the DALI llama, which is an npx package, or an npm package. So you can npx DALI, and it will. So it's a GPT. It's using Facebook's llama model that they released, a few weeks back, and effectively you can run your own GPT on your computer. They released it in a way where you had to apply to get access to the model, probably for legal reasons, and then someone immediately put it on BitTorrent, and there's a ticket on the GitHub where replacing the README instructions with the torrent link, and they've left the ticket up. It's got 400 people replying in it now. It's quite funny. But they left the ticket up, and I think that means that the people developing this have no issue with you gaining it via BitTorrent. They're happy for you to do that. It's just that their lawyers forced them to put this form in place, so you had to apply to get access to the model. Anyway, so you have to download the model, and then with Dalai Lama, it actually requires you to have CMake and stuff like that installed for it to work. So it's much better that something like T does this, because we can install CMake. While with the npx package, you have to install it yourself. So I think we could be the best way to use this. So I'm finishing that up today. Hopefully, made some good progress. We're only downloading one of these smaller models, the 7 billion parameter one, because it's 4 gigabytes, while the 65 billion parameter one if you try to BitTorrent the actual thing that Facebook released, it's 256 gigabytes. Enormous. So what they've done here is they've reduced the size of it and thus its capabilities. But you have to reduce the size of it not for storage space, but also because you need enough RAM, basically. Video RAM specifically, but if you're using a Mac, then it has unified RAM, so it's whatever your RAM is in your computer. So yeah, it'll be fun to play around with. It comes with the chat script, so you can chat with it. And as I understand it, it's quite good. Not as good as OpenAI, but for what you can do locally. And so, you know, I think we're all going to have a lot of fun making things with this. Anyway, so yeah, like, sorry to get off topic once more. Because this is unversioned, if you go up, like, they got releases, yeah, but like these are just shards. They're not, you know, proper semantic versions. It's just a Git shard. So I've made it so that you can just say convert the release into a calver. So calver is calendar versioning. So it's like 2023.03.23 is today's calver, for instance.
Nice.
So I think we'll probably just do that with some of these other unreleased things like keep. There'll be a key you can put in the package YAML where it's just like, just grab this tarball and tag it with the calver. I don't know. I haven't talked to Jacob about it yet. I don't know how he feels about that.
Jacob doesn't like Calver. Otherwise,
yeah, well, calver is kind of awful. It's true because it gives you no information really, apart from how new it is. Like semantic versions, the different digits mean something. So as a developer or a user, you can make conclusions based on that. Although a lot of people do semver incorrectly, our protocol will slash you if you do that. So we're hoping that we will improve open source in many ways. One of them being that the semantic version of a package will actually be true.
Yeah, that's funny. That's very funny. Yeah, and I think you mentioned it. I think also T can be probably the best way to install many of these AI tools locally. I mean, I posted in the chat before. Let me just bring this up real quick. There's this like ChatBlade and like an old one that we packaged already a while ago. Artificial intelligence infrastructure as a code, right? So it basically creates all these like IACs, whether it's Terraform, Pulumi, CloudFormation, Docker files, etc. We'll just create the proper scripts for you because they're so difficult. And then this ChatBlade, which is basically hooks up to GPT or ChatGPT, but is a command line tool essentially, and gives you this nicely formatted version. You can actually get context or in a new conversation from your previous conversation. You can instantiate different versions of GPT as well, and yeah, overall, it's a really cool interface. I mean, it takes a moment for it to compute the answer, but yeah, if that's not an issue, then it's actually a really good tool in the command line. And this is just typing in ChatBlade or whatever command. You can copy this if you have T installed. And
doesn't it require an OpenAI key to be set?
Yeah, of course. But it will.
The good thing about Llama, right, is it asks. Well, that's cool. The good thing about Llama is that it doesn't require OpenAI. Like a lot of these AI tools that are turning up and like people are going crazy for, really, they're just very thin interfaces over the OpenAI API, which isn't that impressive, really. With Llama, we package up the model, right? I'm not hosting the model because we get a DMCA for sure. We're hosting the torrent that gives you the model, and I don't think we're going to get in trouble over that. But if we do, I'll just pass it straight to Troy, so that's no problem.
Yeah, good thing he's gone already.
Yeah, but Chris is still here.
You didn't hear that. Yeah, so this is helpful. I'll push this to the docs section as well under pantry and the packaging, so that we have this as well. And then, of course, contributions to our docs and the pantry are welcome. What should we look at next? I wanted to see. I can't really see, unfortunately, the div of like all the packages that we packaged last week, because I think. Oh, and there was like 40 some packages. You said.
Yeah, there was I think it was a record breaker. 43, I think it was.
Yeah, 43 packages in 1 week. That was nuts. Yeah, but it really helped having this list here, a sorted list of important packages. And yes, so I mean, we still have, like I say, I always like block around 2 hours or so for this. I mean, we're like 45 minutes in. We don't need to go the full 2 hours, obviously. But I would still perhaps, make it a tradition and maybe package something. And our free Excel is quite simple. Looking at it's just a make script, right? That's fairly simple.
We need Doxygen there. Like, do we have Doxygen pack?
Yeah, we packaged that.
Okay, great.
We packaged it. Okay, that was not a question. I kind of hard muted him or her. You can just mention in the messages if you want to be unmuted. Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, I think everyone still knows kind of like. Let me go back to the README here. I mean, we still have the README up, right? Clone this directory, cd into pantry. That's what I've done. I already forked it, so that's why it looks like this. And I'm currently in the main branch. Let me just make this a bit bigger. And let me just look into free text. So it's sometimes it's always tricky, like really to find the right naming, because I mean it's hosted under Gaia GIS, and then there's like something called fossil, but like do we need fossil in here? No, it probably has an index.
Like we don't require it to be the exact URL, although now we have magic. It should be, because it's there for the homepage as well, which is part of the documentation. So yeah, does it work if you don't have index in the URL?
Well, it just autocomplete. It like redirects to index.
Yeah, that's fine then. This is just so old.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that there's not .html in here.
Yeah,
So
we almost did T's website with the .html extension on everything. It was an idea. Maybe we still could. Maybe.
Okay, so yeah, what I typically do if it's.
Why would you log into this thing? I guess there's a wiki. It's great. Some of the package homepages for some of this really old, like fundamental tech, it's got a wiki. No way.
That's great.
When was the last change? Yeah, recently.
Yeah,
bad.
Let's
see how far it goes back.
11.
Yeah, it's not that old.
No.
It's certainly got a very Web 1.0 vibe to it, though.
Mm-hmm. It's like how GitHub looks before GitHub.
I feel like it's trying to look like Microsoft Docs since it's an Excel tool.
Yeah.
Let me just see if I can make this bigger. It's so small here. I hope it's big enough for you.
Yeah.
So package init is, package comes from BroKit, and package init is you can call package init without any, identifier or without any name. It will just create a work in progress package. So it always needs a package name in the projects directory. But if you give it, directly what your package should be called. So Gaia, GIS, IT, etc. FreeXL. Then it will create that package. Actually, let me see why this is the case. It might be because I did make wipe the T instance, but T is here. T exists.
Try CD dot, like, if that works, then I know what the problem is. Now try again.
I also feel like sometimes the magic doesn't load in VS Code subshells, so it might not be making login shells, or it might be using a login.
Yeah, I don't use the VS Code terminal very often, but well, it should just be,
So yeah,
try CD dot here.
Magic.
Okay, let me just see.
What? All right, do env. Now we're debugging on the stream. Nah, just env.
Just env.
Yeah.
Right.
Dump everything, right? Yeah, T packages is wrong. What the fuck? Let's open this in Finder, open dot.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, that's very strange.
It's completely wrong. Open dot. Type open space dot. Yeah. This is wrong. How old is this checkout of Pantry?
Old fork, yeah.
Oh, you know what? Yes, it might be it might not be so old. Okay, let me just wipe this checkout and get this one here.
I hope you haven't got anything. Well, it's gone now.
It's gone.
Hope you didn't have any work in progress in there.
No, there was nothing in there. I always make sure.
Okay, so now it should work. You might want to do CD dot though, in the VS Code, because that's how you get the magic to reload. Now we might make it so that it checks for the magic every time the prompt turns up, in order to fix that scenario. Because I like things that just work. The reason I haven't done it yet is because T takes too long to execute. It takes like 100 milliseconds, and that's like a perceptible amount of time. And that's because of Dino. Now, Dino claim they're going to improve that, so if they do significantly improve it, then we'll consider doing that. Like right now, we're pre-V1, we don't have to work perfectly, but that's the goal. The goal is to work perfectly.
Mark, you can just use package edit, and it will open up any work in progress.
Yeah, I'm so used to doing this for some reason because sometimes I have multiple packages.
Well, I know why. It's because it was buggy. There was issues with it. But I have fixed all the bugs I know about with it now, so you can start relying on it. That's how people work, right? It's like they learn how to use a tool, and so if they learn early enough when it's buggy, then they learn how to get around all the bugs, and they never forget to do whatever it is they're doing.
Yes.
So the early adopter's curse.
That's 100% it, yeah. Okay, so for the distributables, I mean, there's a lot of annotated comments here. If it is this the first time you've seen this, I feel like for me, I've been packaging a couple of packages already, so I kind of like know what all of this means. But basically, the distributable URL is where we get the source code that we then build from. And in this case, we've got it right here on their website. We can also look at all the versions. They're nicely hosted here. We'll typically get the latest version, so not the release candidate, which is not released yet, but the latest version 1.06. And we can paste this here. Change out the version with a version variable. I'll just remove this for just that it looks a bit cleaner. And then because there is no GitHub. I mean, we can look for GitHub, and there's currently no way to get the versions from here. But maybe in the future. So we want to name it the same version. So this is substituted in here. Just for references, there's various ways to get versions automatically. So from GitHub, repo tags or repo releases tags. And this will also help then. So if they have a GitHub repo, it would be great to kind of like fill out and get the versions dynamically from here, because then whenever there's a new version, specifically a new release, we can automatically tag it and build it like as soon as it's released, within a couple of minutes at least. And then the packager has to touch that package anymore unless that particular version breaks the build process or changes the build process in some way. So then we go back to our kind of like package formula on here, and we can see it only depends on Doxygen and of course also make. But make, as you can see, is already kind of like, we have different keys here. We have a dependency key, which is a dependencies key, top level, which is the runtime dependency. There is no runtime dependency here. Runtime dependencies are also used in build scripts. However, we have a build script tag with a dependency, and so here are all the build dependencies that are only used for building this particular package. And we use Doxygen. And if you don't know what Doxygen, I mean, I know Doxygen is called Doxygen.nl because I packaged it, but if you don't know, and most people probably don't know, you can search Doxygen, and the error appeared because I didn't save this package YAML, and we had multiple GitHub keys here, and obviously that's an incorrect YAML because it can only have one key once. So yeah, if you run this, you can see that Doxygen basically has Doxygen.nl as a namespace. So that's why I put it here. And then you can specify just the version as well. Okay. Next up, we have a configure. So configure script. There's a couple of flags here that we can copy over. And
you don't need the disable dependency tracking or the disable silent rules. Like, it very marginally increases the compile speed.
Mm-hmm.
So but Brew's 11 years old, more at this point, and it mattered more then. So we don't usually bother.
Okay.
With T.
Yeah, that's good way as well. There's actually one question I have here for these particular like C build pipeline. So sometimes I see that we have kind of like make jobs, hardware concurrency install, and sometimes we have it on like 2 lines. Is there a difference?
Yeah, like doing it.
Written, yeah.
So if you do it in 1 line, it's usually like slightly faster. It's more efficient. But some make files are badly written and it fails. So the only time it will be 2 lines is if it failed, if it's in 1. And really there should be a comment explaining that, but because we copy a lot of these formula from Brew, and they don't have comments, so we don't know, we just copy it a lot of the time. Like sometimes it's like a concurrency thing, so it only fail like 1 in 50 times, so it's not worth trying to figure it out if it's going to work or not. So yeah, it's just that bad make files. Like all modern build systems have the kind of primitives in place that humans can't fail with as easily, so they do a better job. But make is an old thing.
Well, and some people write make files where their install target doesn't depend on their build target. So if you try and just run make install, it'll say, I can't find the binary to install. So you have to actually make the binary first and then make install. So there's some low quality make files out there.
Understood. Okay. Understood. Well, we'll try with a one-liner here. So that's the script key, and then we have the env key. And the env key, as you can see, we're using an environment variable right here, and it's called args. So it's pretty easy to kind of like distinguish. Okay, where does this like args come from? And
I have to run.
Yeah,
we're on a call with Solana Labs right now. So
nice. Enjoy.
Speak soon.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, one of the most important arguments to pass into any kind of like build script, because they typically don't. I mean, they don't know where we want them to install our package. So we need to tell it specifically where we want it to install the package. So in this case, this is the prefix variable. And configure, for example, has a -- prefix flag. And if you're in CMake, for example, there's a particular, like a different flag that's, maybe I can show that real quick because we had a CMake. Yeah. So CMake, you see, we pass in args here. And what we do is it's that particular flag is called dcmake install prefix. And what this is super important so that we make sure that the package that we're building is installed into the T directory and not in like user local bin or something. All right. So no additional arguments to add here. Even though, like Max said, there's like, these older ones that try to speed up the install process. And then we can just like package build. I should have done. I will just try package build. I trust the system. So what it does, it checks if there's a diff. If I just don't type anything and it packages whatever has been added new. So in this case, package.yaml. Yes, and while this is running, so it completed. While this is running, I want to just show like another thing. There is a builds directory that's excluded in a git ignore. And right now I only have one source in here. It's like hard to see. And you can kind of see the version. So it's using the same path where we have installed it. So the full qualified identifier, full qualified domain name, plus that route to FreeXL. So the same name as our package, plus the version, plus the actual build environment. So I'm on a Mac, so that's why it says Darwin here. And here are some like, our tar file that's kind of like temporarily downloaded. And that's being reused if I kind of like call the build process again. It's not downloading the same tar zip again. Instead, it's kind of like hitting the cache. So cache hit, and that's why it's kind of like storing the tar ball in here. Okay, I shouldn't. So before, if you remember, we had atout file directory being created here with all the packages being built into this. However, now we build directly into the .t directory. So I open the .t directory and our package is right here. And I mean, the package doesn't have a binary. It's just a header files and a library. So, but the cool thing about this is that it lives basically with all your other packages that you would typically have in a T installation, or that you have installed throughout the day or course of time of using T. And that also means that you could, reuse a locally built package, as obviously as if it builds correctly, you could reuse that in another build of a different package. So there was one question from Magnus Viri in the channel today about, can I reuse locally built packages in another build? And yes, you can. So I could use, let's say, I don't know, another package that uses FreeXL. I could then specify FreeXL as a runtime dependency or build time dependency, depending on what it needs. And it would not have been merged yet with, or not been merged in the global pantry of T. It just sits on my local machine. And yeah, so this was the one big change that I wanted to show you, that this is now, we have this builds directory, and we have all the packages being packaged to .t directory. So it doesn't have a binary, so we don't need the provides key. The provides key is basically there to tell Magic what particular names to look for. Since there is no binary, there's no provides key. And then going to kind of like the test. So this formula is nice enough. It has a test in here, so I can copy kind of like the test. So it writes, I mean, if you read like Ruby code, then like this will make your life easier. But even if you don't, it's like not so hard to kind of like understand what it's doing. So it's basically writing this code into a file called t.c. Sorry, I already see T everywhere. Test.c, so a test a C file. And then down here, it's running this particular test file with a C compiler and passing in the FreeXL library. And then, yeah, this is just printing the version of FreeXL. So it's a pretty basic test, but it's sufficient in our case. So how we do this in T, and we don't have like this complex like write to file thing, because everything is in YAML format. So we have something called fixture. It's another YAML key that we added here, and you can basically add any kind of code here. This is sufficient for this is ideal for like a few lines of code. Not if you need a test that's like 50 or 100 lines of code, then it becomes not really legible. So we typically suggest to add a where is my directory? So we typically suggest to add a test file in here into the same directory next to the package YAML, and then the test script has access to it. So this is much easier. If it's a longer file. If it's a short file, then you have everything in the package YAML. It's easy peasy. So we want to specify C compiler, and then let's see if GitHub Copilot helps me. It doesn't help me. So I'm moving the fixtures to a C file, and then I'm doing this. By default, I learned last time, by default, this goes out to a.out file. So I don't need to specify like this. This is redundant code. So you don't need to specify this. You also don't need to specify the import, include, or libs. But maybe Jacob can tell me why again. Sorry.
So you don't need the include path or the libdir path, because T sets all those. So when you have FreeXL in your T environment, as you will when you're testing, it's already setting the C path and the libdir, so you don't need the -I or the -L. And in fact, you shouldn't have to include them, because since T's doing that, that would actually defeat part of the testing. So
Perfect.
those should all be automatically generated by the T environment if FreeXL is included. And if you were making your own tool that used libFreeXL, that's part of the benefit of T is that it sets up all of those include directories and live directories for you. So it dramatically simplifies what you're working on by including the stuff you're working with.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, that's super helpful. Yeah, so I can just call package test, and that's the kind of like the package command for, or PKG command for running this particular test. And if I do that, it prints out 1.0.6, which is the version of FreeXL that we packaged, and that's correct. So last time I remember it didn't really work on Linux. Since then it has been fixed. So I mean, a full 2 weeks have passed. So obviously it's been fixed like a day later, but I couldn't show this last time. But I mentioned that we have because currently we're on 2 platforms with Darwin and Linux, we can test if you have Docker up and running, which I have up here. Then you can test it out and build it in this Linux container. And that command is just a flag like -L for Linux, and it will spin up everything in that container and also remove it when it's done with that process. So that's really nice. And yeah, I think it helps debug some things. I mean, we have the CI running on all the platforms, on 4 platforms, on Darwin, x86, and like the AMD 64, and then also Linux, also on basically ARM architecture and Intel x86 architecture. Yeah, LLVM always is a really big package. So 780 megabytes. So that will take a moment. But yeah, because our CI tested in all 4 platforms essentially, you get kind of like the output from the CI. I can show that while this is building. I can show, or let's say, a recent package that was packaged. Yeah, let's just use this. So if I dive into the CI, and obviously anyone has access to this because it's on GitHub, it's a public repo, so you can look into the build process. It's generally not interesting. It's only interesting if builds fail. If builds pass and tests pass, then it's just great to have that green check. But as you can see, it like does exactly the same as like it runs pkg build, that particular package identifier, downloads all the required dependencies, and then runs the same as if you were doing it locally. And sometimes, these take a while to run. So it's obviously easier to debug and like run this locally. So that's why we're running. That's great that we can test both the Mac version and the Linux version, because sometimes they do differ. Hopefully in this case it'll probably it's smooth sailing and it will just run through. Yeah, I mean, extracting almost a gigabyte of a package takes some time, but it's fine. It's fine. In the meantime, are there any questions from you, or like is this clear so far? Or is there anything else? I'm also thinking, and I'm just thinking out loud, it would be cool to kind of like have one of the, like, if someone of you wants, they can also host one of these office hours. Doesn't always need to be me or one of the team. I've seen in other discords, they have like community contributed office hours. Okay, so it seems like that there's some issue, or is there some configure error? Cannot guess build type. Must specify one. Interesting. Build type. Let's. This is again Linux live debugging. FreeXL. Build type failure. It should work though. Okay. Interesting. I mean, I'm on an. Let me try this.
I wonder if FreeXL doesn't have any specific AArch64 support. So if they haven't updated their configure scripts in a while, like if they're using really old versions, it might not be able to detect the AArch64 architecture. So you could try passing that build flag on Linux.
Yeah, that's actually. Do I always mix this up. I guess I separate them like this, right? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I
Is
love
this?
GitHub Copilot trying to suggest stuff for you. Just guessing.
Yeah.
So what? For Linux, you're not going to want AArch64 for all of them. So you're going to want hardware.arch as the first part. Unknown Linux new is right, but just
Okay.
you're going to replace that architecture bit with the hardware.arch mustache.
Okay.
1A.
1A only.
Yeah, hardware. Yeah, because it's the hardware architecture. Not
Oh,
the
okay.
architecture 64. Yeah. That way, it'll come up right on x86 64 too, which is what you want. Otherwise, you'll really confuse it.
Okay. Oh, that's a new. I didn't know about this variable. That's good. But yeah, here we show basically that we can separate also particular environment variables for particular platforms. So args prefix basically will be passed to all platforms, but this particular argument, so build flag here, will only be passed on Linux architectures. And this will work basically anywhere. So you can also use it within dependencies. If you have specific dependencies that are only used on Linux, you could add this particular key here. So this is also another good thing to know, I would say. This should go a lot faster now because we already have all the packages, all the dependencies downloaded. What was I showing before? Okay, no, this was just Googling something. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, so it's easier to kind of debug this locally, because if I had pushed it to or opened a PR and then, this error would have come, it would be annoying because I could have done this already. It seems like it's working, and yeah, so it that particular flag worked, and it opened I wonder. Jacob,
And
you
you should be able to use -L with package test to confirm that it'll pass the tests in Linux as well.
right? I was wondering, is there a way for me to before there was t.linux, where everything was packaged into. Is there an equivalent, or do I need
It's actually a really good question. What's under builds? Does it show? Have
builds?
a-
Is just
There you go. Yeah, you got the Linux build and the Darwin build.
yeah, but that's kind of like the source code, or like the working build
Oh, you're looking for the actual
output files.
build projector.
Yeah.
That is a good question. I'd have to take a look at BrewKit and see what it's mounting.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, I can run
Okay.
t-test. Oh, not t-test. pkg test. And that's also working. So version 1.0.6. That's great. Do I see where it is mounting here from the environment? Don't think so.
Check into your t prefix txyz BrewKit mount directory.
No, nothing in here.
All right, that's what it's mounting over root. Mounting the pantries. I don't see that it's necessarily mounting the output other than using that directory as root.
Right. Maybe it's but it's strange because the test, it should run against something, no?
It should.
Yeah. I'm trying to look where it is, where it could be. That's an interesting. I'll look into it.
Of course, because it's going to be a hidden file in that directory. There's going to be a .t file in there
Okay.
that you won't see in Finder unless you have hidden files turned on.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's a okay, that makes sense. So it's E. Right, there we go. Okay. Problem solved. Because it's a .t directory inside the mount file. Okay, that makes sense. Nice. So everything is really now in the .t directory and really tidy. That's very good. Okay. So everything works. We confirmed that. Let me just go back to the starting point. We've run through all of these, init a new package, edited a package, built a package, tested the package, and we also tested it on Linux, Linux Docker. Now we want to fork the repo, create a new branch, and then open a pull request. Like to add remote for the fork, yes, okay. Get branch, and what we're calling this FreeXL, and then we can kind of like add our files in here. I mean, plus FreeXL, and yeah, finally we can push it to our origin, just to check that, like double check that the origin is my fork. XL, and we can open a PR This is always the same problem for me. So GH is the command line tool for GitHub. And you can it abbreviates a lot of the things that you can do on GitHub, like opening pull requests. And there's this command called ghpr create, and then this -w is just a flag for opening it in a browser window instead of doing it from the command line, because I do feel a little better doing it from the browser when I open a PR. But you can also, there's a nice interface to do it locally here, but you need to set a repo, default repo against which pull requests are opened, etc. And because I have two remotes, it will ask me which one is the default repo, and the default repo for the pull requests is the TXYZ pantry. So I can call this again. It will ask me to push the branch again for some reason. I didn't understand this, but you want to push it not to T, but to us. The only reason why I'm seeing this is because I have... Good question. Probably because I have write access to the T pantry path. Otherwise, I wouldn't see this. Or not the choice of two. But yeah, here you can double check, that everything's correct. So we're pushing my branch, FreeXL, to the main branch. And what I always do is I write closes and then FreeXL. So this closes then the issue associated with FreeXL once it's merged. Yeah, so FreeXL, as you can see, has this kind of linked pull request here in the issue, and once this pull request runs through and is merged, if it's all green, if there's no errors that we didn't see, then it closes the issue, and we have another package off of the top 300 list. So that was about this. I hope this was helpful for some of you. I learned a couple new things. I feel like I want to update one of the examples also with this particular variable. I think that's helpful. Or also with this. Kind of subsetting the different architectures and different things. I think that's helpful in the examples. I didn't consider this before when creating this. I think this could be useful to people trying to package something and running into errors. All right. Yeah, 1.5 hours. Any questions unanswered? I see that Penguin joined us, hopefully not from the dinner table. But thanks so much for making it. Yeah, thanks everyone else for making it as well. I hope it was interesting. Yeah, and like I said, I will ask around the community if someone wants to do a community-driven office hour. Can be anything really. Well, anything that we want to show off with T. Doesn't have to be packaging. Can be running something cool. Doesn't have to be 2 hours either, right? It can be half an hour. Can be an hour. I think this would be cool. Yeah, but I'm happy that so many of you joined, stayed so long, and yeah, it's other than that, I would say thanks so much for joining. Well, this is disappointing that this didn't pass. So because I have okay, interesting. Is there Jacob, do you know if Docker, if I run it on Docker on my Mac, which is an M Mac, I cannot specify like an x86 architecture, right?
Oh, I know what this problem is. So the problem is that a lot of tools use x_86. So it's actually a really good thing to show an example of. If you switch back to your package YAML, you can fix this real quick.
Cool.
So change your Linux on line 20 to Linux/ARch64 /
/
And you can change hardware arch back to ARch64 if you want, because we're going to do a specific one for each one. And then put another specific. Yeah, you can copy it. That'll make it easy. And change that to x86-64.
Okay.
And then go down and change that to x86_64.
Interesting.
Yeah, slightly annoying. We picked dash to be a little more user friendly throughout the code base, but unfortunately, a lot of things use underscore as their principal.
I wonder why. So what I noticed,
historical reasons, I assume. It's been a long time, so.
Yeah, what I've noticed is that when you skip basically different words, like entire words, it will respect the dash. It will not respect the underscore. It will think the underscore is part of the word.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I mean, for platform triplets, that may well be the reason that dash is the delimiter. Although Linux new is two different things. Yeah. So that's what it is. That should solve your last bit. And it might be that we don't need the build architecture for x86. It might just detect it, but no reason not to put it in, really.
Nice. Yeah, but that was really a good example to show. I didn't know that. I might have seen this before, but yeah. That's great. Okay. But yeah, I'm not gonna. We can wait until this runs through. But I feel like your time is also important, and I already, used up so much of your time today. But thanks so much for joining. We'll have this again. I'll schedule one right after this is done, and I might actually schedule a couple more in advance, just so that people are aware and can not plan around it, because I don't expect that we're more important than whatever you're doing, but so they can just know when things are happening. You'll find them as always in the events section, or in the announcements. Yeah, I'm also working on a related note. I'm working on a integration so that we get new packages pushed into Discord, similar to kind of in the announcements or releases. I mean, these are not automated, but releases we can also actually automate. And then, yeah, new packages. I think this is also interesting for you to see what's happening, what new packages are coming. And then what else is happening? So yeah, I mean, as you can see, we have a very big build system, CI/CD, and I actually interviewed Jacob, who built much of the build system, and I'll write this up as a blog post because I think many others can benefit from kind of the GitHub Actions setup, how we're doing it. Not that everyone's building a package manager, but still a lot of the principles apply. I mean, we're testing, we're building and testing across multiple platforms. And yeah, it's just cool that this technology is possible today and will, it basically, helps us a lot to do testing this way. And it's all right within GitHub. So that's also nice, that everything's really linked to as an open source project. Cool. Yeah, it seemed like it worked because it's already on the test case, and it worked indeed. So that was a great piece of advice. In case you're running ever into build issues on different architectures, now you know how to split them up. And yes, thanks so much, everyone. I'll just close this unless there's anything else. All right. Thanks so much for hanging out today. This was the community office hours. I'll just mute myself and then turn off the recording. Thanks so much. Have a great evening, day, or morning.